Welcome, friends, to Paige's Lessons. Thank you so much for joining in. This episode, I really want to update you on what this process has been like and just some action steps I've taken that I feel really proud of and wanted to document. In the episode 1 and 2, I gave you more of a background of why I want to do a TEDx talk, and I shared my current status of, hey, here's the action steps and here's what I've been up to. You really get to know me a little bit more when you tune in to episode 1 and 2. But today I just want to share that the last thing I've done is I started a questionnaire and I gave that to my social media following. And I have almost 100 responses. I'm very close. I'm only like a couple away. And that was really my goal, to have at least 100 responses of what is one thing you wish to cross off your bucket list. That is the questionnaire. I wanted to get more research on this word bucket list, what that actually means to people. And how are people basically thinking about this word? What are they writing down? It's not so much for me what's the most common answer, but it's more about how people think about this word. What becomes triggering with this word? Out of the whole responses, I've now created this category. Is this something that someone can cross off their list? Or is this more like an ongoing life mantra? Is this something that people can just have as a lifestyle versus it being a hard-hitting cross-off list? And cross-off is literally like, what is a wish you want to cross off the list? That's in the question, word for word. So it's fascinating to me how vague people still are. And it's no surprise around 90% have filled out travel more. Like, so vague. A lot of them gave me specific locations, whether that was a country or a national park or a village or something like that. But when they just say travel more or travel around the world, if you just put down travel more on your bucket list, how do you know you can do that? It's not measurable. This data has inspired me to get really specific on people's bucket lists and how they can be more efficient. What I think my talk is going to be about is TEDx, and TED in general is about producing and sharing an idea. Yes, you're sharing motivation and personal life stories because that's how you share your authenticity and how you came to be with this idea, but it's about an idea. What is a system or a strategy or a method or a new way of thinking? And so I have this idea so that we can get more organized and actually achieve our bucket list. I want to share some of the things that I've manifested in my life that were purely bucket list driven. So that's the theme as of right now. I'm still in this infant phase of the TED Talk journey, but that's where I'm at right now. I have a lot of answers from my questionnaire, which has been really insightful. Some other things that I've been doing is just watching TED Talks, period. Any range, it could be really any topic, whatever's the most trending on YouTube, or I also subscribe to the TED newsletter, so I'm watching the most recent talks, whether that's TED or TEDx. I am looking at the titles. I'm looking at how the person starts their talk and how the person finishes. I'm looking at their outfits. I'm looking at their stage presence. I'm just really observing the material and the overall energy and vibe of this presentation. I am such a sponge. Like, that's just who I am. I'm a naturally curious, driven by psychology and my fascination for human behavior. Like, I'm obsessed with human behavior. And I think just by watching how people do something really inspires me to do it. I think it's been really helpful to watch these different videos so that I can be like, okay, I definitely want to include this kind of structure, or I like how this person brings it back around. Like, it's a little bit of foreshadowing of what they said. I have TED Talks in the background while I'm working or if I'm washing dishes. I love TEDx and TED in general. I mean, who doesn't want to be motivated, right? Or have a new perspective. So after watching a bunch, I did what I said I was going to do in the last episode, where I committed to just talking into my phone, and then my phone transcribed as best as it can. My phone transcribed what I said. The transitions were sloppy. I was ranting, but I just went on and on of the things that I really want to point out. And then after it transcribed, I put it in a Google Drive and I separated it a little bit into categories. And then I just started editing. And that was my very first draft. So I am proud to say I at least have my speech on paper. Now, does it have the statistics and research references that I need? No, I need to weave that in there. That's my next step, is to look at more research and see how I can plug that in authentically into my talk. Another action item is continue reading my TED Talk book. I'm not very far along, but I'm sure the structure and some other things to consider, of course, will be really helpful, even though I have this speech written out. But I'm really proud of myself, honestly, because getting it on actual paper is so hard. And as a recovering perfectionist, one of the things that we do is procrastination, because if it's not done perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all. Well, then I'm going to be holding my breath if I'm ever going to do a TED Talk. It's on paper. It's organized a little bit. I made it into different sections of like, intro is sharing kind of my bio, my concept. The middle gets into the meat of why it's important and what it actually is, my idea I want to share. And then the ending is just kind of like wrapping up as a summary with what I said from the beginning. That's just blindly, without any specific person coaching me or anything, and not even finishing the TED public speaking book that I'm supposed to read. Like, this is just, I'm just assuming based on watching thousands of hours of TED Talks. But the problem is, when I first recorded and was like ranting, la 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 la, and that's my TED Talk, it was 20 minutes long, which is insane. And I've been reading TED guidelines, and people definitely want under 18 minutes for sure. Like, my personal goal is like 7 minutes. If I can have the speech to a pretty even 7, I'm gonna feel really good. Because you know what? I don't want to memorize that much. It's like, I gotta bring back my acting skills and memorizing lines, and I was never really good at that. The thing that I loved about acting is reacting. I loved going off people's cues because their cues cued me in. But if I'm doing a talk all by myself, I gotta cue myself in for the next step. I know I'm like jumping ahead of myself, but still, that like gives me anxiety of how much I'm going to memorize. So I'm also trying to like cut this speech. Let's trim the damn fat. I made a version 2. So I've made 2 drafts that cut that original. I haven't recorded it, so I don't know what draft number 2 sounds like, but I definitely cut a lot and I feel a lot better. So I still need to include my research / references. I need to finish reading the book. In regards to the draft, I asked on Facebook, the Facebook community group of TED speakers, and said, hey everyone, I just want to share my win. And I finally wrote, it's all on paper, my speech. It's messy, it's terrible. How many versions did you all have before you did your speech? And some of them were like 40 versions. Another person said they had 6 versions. So I was like, okay, well, good to know. I'm sure there's going to be many, 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 many to come. I've also browsed around, looked at a couple applications. I didn't apply for any yet, but I'm reading their questions because I think that's really important to prep myself on what they're asking of me, which is, what is your idea? One of them was like, which actually I've seen often, this question is because it's at a specific place. It's like, do you live here or have you lived here or what's your relationship with this place? And if it's somewhere that I've never been and never even heard of, that's going to be like really hard to convince. So not sure about that one. But I guess they just really want to serve their community, which is totally valid. Another thing that I want to share and be accountable for is one project that I kind of have made up for myself. Now, I don't want to be too obsessive. I need to monitor this. But I have this notebook where I've been taking some notes on specifically this playlist that I created. And this playlist is TED Talks that also talk about bucket lists. And not to compare myself 100% of like, oh man, my talk sucks compares to them, but more like what are the topics that have already been said? Like, what are the ideas that have already been said about bucket lists? And am I on the same path? Do I have a totally new idea? Is it similar to this person? And the theme bucket list, actually at least on YouTube, these talks were like 15 years ago, 8 years ago. I've only watched a few videos so far. And I guess that's good news for me because it hasn't been searchable lately and maybe that's not on people's minds. So maybe that's a good thing. But I'm just kind of making my own little notes of like, wow, like I really like this perspective on bucket lists. I'm not trying to steal anybody's material. I'm just being an observer of what's already been said and see if I can be original. So that's also a little side quest I've done. And that's where I'm at. So I wanted to keep you all updated, and I'm just really proud that I have something on paper, and the versions will keep on coming. So I know my goals, I know my action steps. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, I'll see you later.